everybody, welcome to Folkwise, and today we're going to interview Dr. J. Scott Jordan. Welcome to the show, and before I jump in and ask you your first question, I think Dom has something to address to the chat, to
Okay.
the people of Earth.
Oh, yeah, I have a testimony. No, I just want to say, Dr. Jordan, everybody out there at home, you see me and Daisy here right now, and we're asking you these questions, but it is not just us who writes all your questions and researches all the topics of the various wonderful things you do in academia. We have a whole team of Folkwise interview sleuths who helped us put together this very interview. So if you hear something funny or a very insightful question, don't just thank me and Daisy. Thank the sleuths.
Cool. Very cool.
If you have those emotes for the sleuths, drop them in chat, people. Okay, Scott, I got a question for you. Are you ready to dive in?
Sure, let's go.
All right. What is wild systems theory, and how would you like to see other disciplines take it and run with it? More specifically.
Wild systems theory is a philosophical framework. It's a branch of philosophy called ontology, which is the study of what is real or what exists. And while that might sound pretentious, most of us live in a world where we believe what exists is physical stuff, and then either mental stuff or spiritual stuff. And there are some hardcore folks out there who think that everything is physical stuff. And my belief is that the concept physical is just simply inadequate anymore. It was created. The concept physical doesn't define anything. It's not a positive definition. What it means is non-spiritual or non-mental. So what that really means then is the stuff we call physical is the stuff that we would call the stuff we call physical is the stuff we would call the non-subjective. And then the stuff we call mental or spiritual, that would be the stuff we call subjective. And all three of those frameworks involve a dualism between myself and what I'm in. And that then means that according to objective subjectives divides or physicalism or whatever, the milk, the ice cream, the milk, the sugar, the salt that come together to make ice cream are all much more real than my taste of ice cream. And that's an absurdity. So wild systems theory is a direct challenge to the dualism of contemporary Western thought, which is objective subjective, physical mental, physical spiritual, and instead asks what happens to our thinking if we conceptualize ourselves as self-sustaining energy transformation systems embedded in a self-organizing energy transformation hierarchy. I can answer any questions about what that means. But it's, first of all, for me, it's steeped in science, right? In other words, there is a branch of science called, thermodynamics. It's much more sophisticated than the concept physical, right? And I'm not the first person to think that way. Many people have tried to give energy-based thermodynamic models of what a living system is for the past 100 years. Wild systems theory was built to do that so that dreams can be as real as brains. And other disciplines, I think, can use this if it gives them a way to challenge the subjective-objective divides in their own field. So as you very well know, Daisy, Daisy gave an amazing talk at a conference in New Mexico back in the fall. And what is quiltness? And that's the issue. What is the meaning of a quilt? And it can't be explained by physicalism. It can't be explained by dualism. So it has to be explained or conceptualized coherently in something that doesn't begin with binaries. And subjective objective divides are inherently binary. And if one is in a discipline and you're struggling with the concepts objective and subjective are everywhere and it's not working for you, that's precisely why Wild Systems was built, to find another way to talk about what we are that doesn't rely on these binaries, and actually serve to keep us separated from what we're in. So I know that's vague, but follow-up questions might help.
One, I guess I have a follow up that actually came out of my defense, my dissertation defense
I
recently.
love it.
But
Yeah.
one of my committee members, I think maybe was struggling to grasp like what we were talking about in that particular chapter about quilts and about like wild systems theory, and asked if we get rid of subject object divide, what happens to belief?
No,
And
that's what they asked.
yeah, they said,
Hmm.
where does belief live? I was
Okay.
like, uh,
Well, the assumption in
everywhere.
there is
I
that
was like, yeah,
the assumption in there is that belief is subjective,
right,
but so is the taste of ice cream, and so is the enjoyment you were having playing that game 10 minutes ago.
yeah,
Right. And um, if we were going to do a science of belief and give a causal theory about what beliefs cause, um, we'd either have to accept beliefs as subjective things that have causal properties, which don't, that way of thinking doesn't pan out even, because in the end of any science, the only things that cause things are objective or physical things. Causality doesn't reside in the house of the subjective in science. You can't philosophically justify using the concept subjectivity as a causal phenomenon. So belief is just as real as a rock. I mean, that's the challenge of wild systems theory. That belief, that thing that person has that they call a belief, I would call that a self-sustaining whole, um, that is multi-scale in its nature. And what I mean by that is, obviously, if we want to scientifically explain what a belief is, right? We can start looking at the brain, and that's everybody's first retreat. Let's just go look at the brain and see what happens to beliefs when I play with the brain, right? But you know what? Let's take that brain and raise it in a different culture. And we're going to find out a different phenomenon that we call belief, right? And what that means is that beliefs can't scientifically be explained at one level of, of activity. So much like what is quiltness, what is beliefness, we find that science's attempt to reduce things to a particular level of causation is half, if not 80% of the problem. Now, I don't blame science for isolating variables at a level and keeping things constant so that they can say A causes B. But I think we're going to find in 50 years, science isn't going to be using the concept of causality anymore. We're going to be using the concept of multi-scales constraint. In other words, my ability to walk isn't in my brain. My ability to walk is in my brain, my muscles, my bones, the sidewalk, the gravity field that I'm in. So science had to develop isolating variables, giving them names, and coming up with a way to talk about how it works. And the dominant model has been what's called efficient causation, which is what you see on a pool table, where pool ball A hits pool ball B and parts a force on it and moves on. And we treat the world as if it functions that way, but it just doesn't. Everything is multi-scale. Everything is constrained by multiple scales of energy transformation, and multiple scales of being, whatever you want to call it. And now we have mathematical systems that can do that.
contextual embodiments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And exactly. And now with dynamical systems math, people are giving up on isolating how does A cause B. What they're looking at is measuring A over time and then trying to assess like the multi-scale nesting of variables that constrains how A fluctuates in different contexts. That's a different type of explanation than A causes B. And so it's not, wild systems is just tapping into that idea earlier than a lot of people are. It's doing so philosophically, not scientifically. That's true. So, yeah, I do feel the 21st century is going to be the century of constraint. We're going to talk about multi-scale constraint, not causality, and not causality between subjective and objective properties. I hope that made any sense at all.
I think it does, and I'm going to try to help make it like a little more folklore, because I think in some ways, like when we talk about belief, people talk about how belief informs behavior, which is a kind of causal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what wild systems theory does is saying it's not a causal relationship. There is no one source of belief where that lives, or one thing that influences the way that beliefs come to be in the world, but rather it's a way of talking about the scales that influence, that constrain what types of beliefs continue or proliferate in the world, and how they interact with each other, as opposed to you were born believing something, which I know folklorists would never argue. They would argue that it's all subjective, and that maybe even it's more of a nurture over nature. Like that dualism is like gone with wild systems theory. There is no, it just is part of the way that the energy that conforms a body and that makes you alive is influenced by all of the things that are around it. And so I think when it's difficult to explain, because I think people want to go to, so why is it important? And I think they go to the causal. It's important because it does a thing.
Right.
Rather than it's important to talk about how all of these things are interacting to make the thing in the first place. Maybe is a way to say it.
I think another thing that's going to happen with wild systems theory, or at least it's happening for me, is that we're going to reevaluate what the hell words are, right? What the hell concepts are. Because Scott's looking at the computer screen. I'm transforming energy fields around me. We call them words. We say they contain meaning, but the only reason, wenn ich auf Deutsch reden, kannst du niemand mich verstehen, right? When I speak in German, you can't understand me because you can't.
I did understand that, but
well, I didn't. But
But the reason
because I was born in Ohio and you moved here.
Yeah, which is part
you
of
have a brain that was in a context where those regular transformations in the energy field that you were in, your brain were coupled with other things that people were doing, and over time they developed what we call meaning, right? And so you've embodied what we call German, right?
Yes.
And we say you learned it and that sort of thing. And I gotta make sure I keep to my point here. Belief, thought, intentionality, these are not causes of behavior, these are constraints on behavior. And what I mean by that is, if someone ends up dead at a party, right, and it turns out that they were against the kitchen door and someone was standing in front of them and had a knife, and the knife ended up in that person's body, that person might be arrested, charged with murder, and they'd be put on a trial. Well, what is the defense going to do? What the defense is going to do is make it clear that the knife didn't end up in the body because of any quote-unquote pre-specification of the knife being in the body on the part of my defendant. Someone came through and pushed the door, right? And it's because that person pushed the door, or the person that pushed the door was drunk, or there was water on the floor and they slipped. And what you're going to find in the court of law is intentionality. Belief is never accepted as the only possible cause of a behavior. Rather, what you get unveiled in a trial is all the multi-scale events that'll give either lawyer the opportunity to win the case. So our system of justice actually understands that behavior is never caused by a particular level. It's constrained by multiple levels simultaneously, all playing out in real time. And I think science is going to catch up to that idea. And I think within 30, 40 years ish, we won't be talking causality anymore. We'll be talking constraint. So beliefs. Go ahead, man.
I was gonna say, can I have
Go for it. Yes.
a follow up and a question?
You can have whatever you want.
Okay, so I guess the follow up. Well, yeah, you said that at the end, but I guess what I'm hearing is it sounds like a way for, like like hard science and social science or whatever to like walk into the future, like on the same terms. You know what I mean?
What it is. It's
Okay.
exactly.
Then I followed. Hooray!
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got to track with science. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that the humanities have faced
Mm-hmm.
is that during I had the name in my head and post-structuralism. That's not what I'm after.
Postmodernism.
Postmodernism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So postmodernism really starts to deconstruct any kind of final anything and make the word, make the meaning, make everything relational.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't do it by integrating itself with science. And it's not like it's got to integrate itself with science. And it's not that I have to integrate everything with science, because science also has to be integrated with the Marvel Universe and the narratives. I mean, it all has to be part of the same reality. And postmodernism didn't really carry itself as if it cared what science said. And that's fine. That's not me. I needed something that what I would call grounded relativism. In other words, the property of science, I've used the words objective, subjective. I'll use a different dichotomy that science uses quite often, and that is relational versus intrinsic. So we're all in K through 12 science, we learned that mass is intrinsic to a body, but weight is relative. What that means is the weight of an object is relational, exists in relation to the gravity field, the strength of the gravity field that it's in. But the idea was that mass was independent of the gravity field. So therefore, it belongs to the body in and of itself. It doesn't come from the rest of the universe. It's just in and of itself a property of that thing. In the last 20 years of the philosophy of science, it's been found and just argued that mass comes to particles as they travel through something called the Higgs field. Well, what's the Higgs field? Well, the Higgs field is a field that permeates all of reality. So what this means is that mass comes to a particle because it's moving through everything else, right? In other words, mass is now a relational property. Mass doesn't belong to the property, is not a property of the particle in and of itself. It's what it means for a particle to, I don't even know if a particle can exist outside of reality. So what you see going on in 21st century philosophy of science is a return to, first of all, indigenous ontologies that have always had a relational bent, that have seen us as of, from, and in Earth, right? And then there was a philosophical movement in Europe called continental philosophy that was a resistance to Descartesian dualism that created a thoroughly relational, everything's about everything and nothing's about itself. The challenge faced by those folks is that they still had God at the center of everything, and so science would have nothing to do with it. But I do see in the 21st century, with the advent of dynamical systems theory, complex systems theory, mathematics that conceptualizes multi-dimensional systems and tries to track how they organize over time. We see mathematically we're getting prepared for everything being about a thoroughly relational reality where everything is what it is because it's in reality with everything else. The best piece of philosophy I've read in the last couple of years is a book called After Finitude. And the guy argues the only truth, the only thing that's necessarily true is that everything could be different. If you just take a moment to think about that, the only thing that's absolute, right, that cannot not exist, is that everything could be different. If that's the case, that means that everything is contextually bound. And there's no part of reality that transcends context.
Which is
And
what Octavia Butler says when she says the only God is change.
yes, that's what Earthseed's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, the most important thing of Octavia Butler's work for me is Earthseed, right? I'm sitting there reading God is change, change is God. Whatever you touch changes, whatever touches you changes. It's like, now that's not necessarily wild systems. That's a little it's a little more generalized than wild systems.
Yeah.
That is a thoroughly relational ontology, right? And wild systems, I'm not the first, by the way, to try to take contemporary scientific thinking and embed it in a thoroughly relational reality. A guy by the name of Spinoza was kicked out of the church because everybody at that time was saying God was everything. God is nature. God is the infinite power of nature. And Spinoza says, well, if God is the infinite power of nature, and God is infinite, then I am in God. I am a manifestation of that infinite power, but I'm not infinite. I'm spatial temporal. So therefore, I must be finite. Therefore, Spinoza created the concept of finitudes. I'm a finitude of infinity. And what Spinoza gets to do with that is say, then anything that exists as a being, as a thing or whatever, must necessarily entail physical and mental or physical and spiritual properties because it's an embodiment of everything. Wild Systems is basically a 21st century reframing of that idea. Being a little, but completely getting rid of mental physical, completely getting rid of binaries, because when you're stuck in a binary system of thought, that reveals your thresholds, not the world's. And because the world's not binary, never has been, never will be. World's a mess. And so that was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it was excellent.
Good, though. That was good. That was good. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask was, and you might have addressed this in that answer, is so am I to take that the name comes from those other mathematical theories that you were mentioning earlier? Like, where does the name Wild Systems theory come from?
Well, systems just comes from dynamical systems, right? And then back probably 20 years ago now, the number one journal in cognitive science was behavioral brain sciences. And what you do in that journal is you send in a huge article that take you years to get it reviewed and published. But once you did, it was accepted. It got sent out to the field, and people were invited to come write 100-word comments, and they'd publish all the comments with the article. So one guy writes, I think the first paper about one of the first papers about dynamical systems theory and cognitive science. He publishes it, and one of the comments was this computer scientist, D. Yeager. And he basically said, the mathematics of dynamical systems theory now, which wants to reduce the complexity of a body's changes to 2 or 3 dynamically interacting variables, that's fine and it's powerful, but it won't work with living systems that are inherently multidimensional wild systems. So I borrowed the concept wild from there. And I'm also being a bit of a jerk with the concept wild, because people think wild means, chaotic and out of control. But living systems are actually masters of chaos, right? They are embodied chaos and they ride chaos their entire life, right? The energy is being used to stabilize what would be chaotic if it weren't bounded. And the curse of being is that we need chaos. If we don't have chaos, the system stabilizes and dies. So
And
um,
I think for folklorists, our favorite kind of chaos is creative chaos.
yeah,
I'll put it that way, I
Hmm.
guess. Like the thing that you do when you're alive to play, to experiment, to
yeah,
negotiate boundary exaggeration or
exactly.
whatever. Like that's I think what folklorists are interested in, just to kind
So
of ground that for the audience.
no, I'm with you, and I have to be careful when I talk about these things these days because I start to sound like creative people are the best, sound like an elitist. But in fact, people that aren't creative are doing very, very important work that sustains human culture. So there
Yeah.
are all kinds of different dimensions that people differ on. And one of the huge failings, I'll say it right here, particularly of American democracy, is we haven't capitalized on diversity to the extent, even a capitalistic Machiavellian would know that we should be capitalizing on diversity more than we do. There's the degrees of freedom and reality to be discovered and revealed and manipulated and managed with different types looking at the problem. So one of the challenges for the Western world is we often act as if there's a best way to be a human. We've got a tradition in the Western world, Stoicism. You've got to be this to be the best, and that's just rubbish. Um, if you look at it from an energy system perspective, different humans are transforming energy in different ways, giving rise to different forms of being that are doing things that I can't do. Now, can I be creative? Yeah, I can be creative. Can I be a scholar? Yeah, I can be a scholar. Can I play the guitar? Yeah. But you ask me to build a home, you don't want to live in it, right?
Might fall over. Yeah.
It's not going to get built.
Yeah.
So that said, there is the advantage that comes to culture, just like any wild system. The advantage that comes, well, creativity is disruption, right? Creativity is a disruption of stable pattern. Now, the thing is, data indicate, for example, that most of the time, most of us are functioning pretty much on autopilot. So right now, I have no idea how my mouth is moving, how I'm breathing to make these words come out. I have no idea how my hands are moving. All that's autopilot. Um, and my brain's just doing what it does. However, if I'm suddenly surprised, like I'm talking to my friend about that episode of Game of Thrones, we're walking down the
Yeah.
stairs, I'm not paying attention to my feet until I start to fall. And all of a sudden I start to fall, they indicate that the brain massively reorganizes its assets to solve that problem right now. So it's in those moments of rupture where we're out of our autopilot, which is a gift, but once we're out of it, we massively increase the degrees of freedom we can bring to what we are, right? And experiments have been done to show that people are able to detect things in moments of surprise that they can't detect when they're busy, when they're doing something, because when you do something, that means you're actually actively keeping everything out. That's another part of wild systems. You're creating boundaries. So if you're looking for your keys, you become a key finding boundary system. You organize everything you're doing to find the key. Something else you may have been looking for that same day could come right in front of you. You wouldn't see it because you've organized yourself to. But in surprise, those borders go down and you're actually more open to difference.
Hmm.
And we've not done as good a job of cultivating surprise as a moment of potential growth that we could. But anybody who's read something that made them grow, it made you grow because it disrupted you. It made you think about people, yourself differently, pulled you out of your autopilot, and then you either engage the uncertainty or you inhibit it and go back to who you were. I would argue there's just a continuum across people. And, I'm one of those people that craves difference. So I read a lot. I watch a lot. I do a lot of things that surprise me. I want something to surprise me because I can handle the instability. I can handle the uncertainty. because I've cultivated a life of doing that, right? To the point where now I write about it, right?
Yeah.
Make my money off of it, to be honest. But that doesn't mean everybody's supposed to do that. I mean, I appreciate the people. I appreciate the students that come into my class and don't really want to learn wild systems theory. They do work to get a C and they go on and have great lives. I don't see that as a failure on my part or their part at all. But yes, creativity is a disruption, and some people can't help themselves but want it.
I'm thinking now. I'm just going down a rabbit hole of thinking about like disruption as an invitation. It's a kind of like invitational.
Yes.
Relationality. Anyway.
Well, violating people's expectations.
Yeah.
Is violating people's expectations is the riskier way to meet them, yet it's the way that makes you most interesting.
Yeah.
If you just go pro forma with cultural blah, you shake hands, you say hi, no one's surprised.
Yeah.
But if suddenly you say something that surprises them, the risk is always that they'll be surprised and be upset about it, in which case you lose. But if you surprise someone with something bold to say, or say a poem, I don't know what it is, but something that generates positive affect while they're in a state of surprise, they won't forget you.
Yeah.
So that's important.
I mean, we can keep going on this for a while, but I have a question that might take us down a little bit.
By the way, while we're having this conversation, have you guys noticed this amazing picture on my wall?
Oh yeah, yes.
I definitely have.
Yeah.
So that's me doing Logan, and then these are a bunch of guys doing different versions of Wolverine at the Marvel cosplay photo shoot 2 years ago.
Oh my God,
and we all got together and started taking pictures, and then one guy says, "Man, put your camera on the ground, man. Put the timer on."
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That is the coolest picture.
That
ever,
is a
man.
cool
That really
picture.
worked out well. Yeah, it's about 3 by 4 foot on the wall there. I love it.
What's your
All right, that was my moment.
the comic panels that you have on the side too? Do you have? Was that Wonder Woman? I was trying to see it next to it. On
So I've got so this
that's
one
those
here,
two, yeah.
that's Regicon.
Oh, okay, that's Regicon. Oh, okay.
That's Wonder Woman.
Oh.
And this is Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then this is David Max, a print of David Max. Oh, come on with who's David Max, female reporter, superhero?
Oh,
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones. Yeah.
Yes.
And what I did for this picture, I already had a print and I had it signed by David Mack, but I went up to him dressed as the Purple Man. I cosplayed the Purple Man, and I asked him to sign it with his left hand, so the print would be crap. And he said he wrote "To the Purple Man" on it, so
That's
it was
awesome.
pretty cool. Yeah, it was fun.
Can I get off topic for a second, Daisy?
Sure.
I go to the Marvel meetup at Dragon Con, and I wear Mr. Sinister. So we gotta fight one of these days.
Yeah, you have to fight. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll find a time at MagFest or something.
I love it.
Yeah.
The photo meetups, and particularly Marvel, because there's so many people there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so much joy.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. Yeah.
People
really
wait
exciting.
all year for the con. Yeah.
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 People wait all year for the photo shoot.
For the photo shoot. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I had oh my gosh, I had when we were doing the anime photo shoot at San Diego last year, I had a group of 4 people showed up as characters from My Hero Academia.
That's awesome.
And we took some really good pictures of them, and I reached out to them. It turns out they were from Mexico. I actually interviewed them at it's on my Dark Loose production channel. I had a little thing called What You Love, and it was so cool meeting them. And that's another thing. Well, I mean, that's just not cons. There's all kinds of places where you can go to meet people, and but those are kind of things that I don't have to think about whether or not I want to do them. I don't really think about spending the energy. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And having a good white gray beard Man,
There's
I can do any sinister white guy that ever existed with this.
yeah,
right.
it's so true.
Authentically, people know that's real. Oh, it's so fun. Oh my god. Yeah.
I do want to be respectful of your time, so maybe
Yeah.
I'll just jump in another question. Is that cool?
No, it's
Okay.
perfectly fine.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right. Why write a song tribute to the most scientifically informed position on consciousness and the self to date?
So that was
Tell us why it's hard work being no one.
so Thomas Metzinger wrote
Yeah.
a brilliant philosophy book back in 2003 and 4 called Being No One. And basically he argued that the self is kind of like a brain simulation, and talked about different levels of neural processing that give rise to different, talked about things being opaque, means there are part of our processing that we can't see, there are parts that we can. And in the end, Tom's trying to write neuro-Buddhism, right? And tap into the Buddhist idea of the self being transient. And he's trying to do it with a neuro model, and it makes great use of the concept of information. And, you know, information was the final concept I had to get rid of in wild systems theory. That's why I talk about embodied context and aboutness, because information gets in for free in causal models, you know, bits, whatever. So I was writing wild systems, and so it's hard work being no one, trying so hard to erase the indelible trace the sun leaves on my face. In other words, how do I get rid of the feeling of my face, right? And what I was also trying to get at is how much energy transformation actually has to exist for the phenomenon of my face to exist. And the song then basically leans into the Wizard of Oz. You know, lion was a coward. No, Tin Man. I'm skipping the parts of the song that I shouldn't skip. But I like to write songs, and I wrote that as a tribute to Tom, right? And we were working together in Germany at the Center for Interdisciplinary Studies at the University of Bielefeld. We were working there. He was there for about 2 or 3 weeks when I was there, and I sang it for him. And it, see, I don't hate information processing theory. I don't hate objective subjective divides. And I see people doing really good work with those concepts, and I know what they mean. They just don't care about the taste of ice cream as much as I do.
Yeah.
On one hand, that sounds trivial, but on the other hand, I think there's something to be said for how much damage binary worldviews do to the world. And if I can believe that there are parts of reality that are real, and that's the objective part, and there are parts that are less real, and that's the subjective part, and then I've experienced myself as a Christian subjectivity, and that is a soul that's ultimately going to reconnect with heaven, where things are realist real, then this spatial temporal space is transient. I can it seems easier to then trivialize the subjectivity of others. I can't back that up as a really good argument. But I can say when people talk about right and wrong and real and unreal and good and bad, I just see those concepts being used to sustain power. I don't see them being used to do anything other than mete out power, or, you know, make judgments for sure. But so yeah, I have great respect for Tom, and even though it sounds like I may have been giving him shit, right? I was, but as a friend would give you shit, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, there's a short story. You can find it on the interweb. It's called "False Pinocchio and the Marlboro Man Meet the Embodied Other," and it's going to be the part of the preface of my book when it comes out. And I remember I'd never met Tom, or maybe I had. I don't know. We were in this group and they were at a conference, and he came down to dinner and he came up to me kind of quickly and he said, "Scott, I just read this story. It's effing brilliant. You are a visionary." Tom's the only philosopher that's ever said that to me. Yeah, it's a heartfelt tribute, even though it sounds like I'm being snarky. But what do you want me to do? Kiss his feet?
Yeah. We thought it was really cool that you had a song like published as like part of a journal series too, and that was an exciting prospect for people who are interested in doing creative things as a kind of research methodology or processing, theory processing. We just thought that was really cool and found it special.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the future too.
Yeah. I mean, I made a quilt as my research methodology. I think it is. I think more folklorists need to like embrace the creative thing that they do. I mean, Dom, you didn't publish it, but at the same time you wrote a dissertation, you wrote a musical. Like
they weren't related, but
I
was pulling all-nighters for both of them. Yes.
Yeah, like they were related to your brain processing the thing that you needed to do, you know, like you needed to I think it's part of it, but yeah.
Well, that's also, I haven't talked about Mike Oakeshott, but Mike Oakeshott is a British philosopher who studied in the tradition of those Germans I mentioned earlier. And I would say the advantage of Oakeshott is he kept all the relational ontology but got rid of God, and didn't embrace the concept physical at all, just talked about this, whatever this is. He labeled it experience, which I think is unfortunate because it ends up being part of a binary anyway. Yeah. But he talked about he got into philosophy because he felt that the human conversation, the conversation of humankind, was being overtaken by one voice, and that was the voice of science, backed by correspondence ontologies, backed by subjective objective ontology, and the idea that it's science's job then to transcend our subjectivities and show us what really exists, right? And once you can get people to believe that that's how you do truth, you can take over the world, right? Because all they need, you know, they don't know what's really going on. Scientists know what's really going on. Folklorists, they don't know what's really going on. They're studying subjectivity, right? You know, literature scholars don't know what's going on. So science started getting more and more, not just intellectual power, but political power. And relational ontologies were viciously attacked and gotten rid of in the turn of the 20th century, particularly by Bertrand Russell, in an attack on German idealism. And science wanted that to happen because not only, I mean, look, scientists have been burned at the stake for like a long time, man. So as far as they were concerned, like, we got to get ours. We just got to get power and leave these fools behind. But that's not science. That's politics.
Right. Yeah.
And so science and politics, they kind of got co-opted by that physicalist movement. And Oakeshott argued, look, science has its coherence constraints on what constitutes scientific truth, and it's quantitative coherence. In other words, the more quantitative coherence, the more phenomena you can count for per unit quantitative model, the more scientific truth you have. But it's never binary, truth versus non-truth. And then he goes, for politics, truth is not quantitative coherence. Truth is the degree to which your stated system of government applies to everyone in a non-contradictory way. So the truth of your politics then is its internal coherence. Does it contradict itself? And then he argued for art, there aren't any coherence constraints. Creativity is creativity. And you can say some of it's better if you want, but it doesn't. So what he's trying to do is say, let's free up the conversation of the species. Let's keep the conversation open because that's how we became what we are. And if we let scientific notions of absolute truth or objective truth take over culture, then we're going to be saying, this is rough to hear, but, well, vaccines are right. Vaccines are right. because they help us stem disease development. And that shortcut is anti-democratic, because you can scientifically demonstrate that vaccines keep disease spread down and for mortality rate. You can, if you want to even use the word prove, you can say prove it. But just because the science gives us a model to predict how diseases play out and how immunizations help, some people don't care.
Yeah.
If I don't care whether or not diseases propagate, or if I don't believe, so what science got in the habit of doing was what I'll call skipping over the if conditional. Right? If you want the species to persist on the planet, then we have to reduce our carbon footprint. But do we have to reduce our carbon footprint? No. We don't. And that's important, because that acknowledges the heart of democracy, which is choice. And one of the problems we've had with science and a lot of liberal politics is skipping that if conditional and acting like people who don't want what you want are dumb and they're just idiots and they don't have the right to want what they want. So Oakeshott spoke to these things, and these contradictions I've experienced in democracy over my life. And it's all about coherence. It's never correspondence. And he calls it a mode of experience, like science is a mode of experience, because that's how he taught. Science is a way of being, a system of being. I like to call it a practice. It's got its own coherence constraints. Quantifiable coherence is the rule. But that doesn't tell me how to stay in love with my girlfriend. It doesn't help me when I'm in a fight. I can't. People aren't fighting because the data are right or wrong. People are fighting because there's something they don't like. So freeing up the human conversation from constraints that. And that's one of the reasons postmodernism came around, because science got such a huge pull in scholarship. It's like, what? It doesn't. What do you mean? How do I know what Dostoevsky really meant, Mozart really meant? But the truth that has nothing to do with the scholarship of Mozart. Well, I'm babbling now. So.
But
yeah.
but like, even maybe to like recenter that, like. Science or vaccine science might be the most coherent way to understand and prevent disease from spreading.
Yes, as it is.
And because it is. But that doesn't mean that everybody wants to or should want to stop disease. Because people don't. Yeah, because it's exactly. So like,
making a career of just exercising a weak-headed democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we arguing with this guy? Look, all we got to do is say this. Look at the data, folks. Once the vaccines came around, there were statistically significant differences in death rates of COVID as a function of who was vaccinated and who wasn't. That's not politics. That's not philosophy. That's statistics. Now, does that mean we should vaccinate? No. It means, what democracy means, that I have the legally protected right to try to persuade you to want what I want. And what I want is for people to vaccinate their kids. But if I start saying, well, it's wrong not to, or you should, and then I'm putting democracy, I'm not doing democracy any good. Because the more I tell people that their choices are shit, mine are right, that's not what democracy would do. It's about, y'all get to be as ugly as you want to be. We're going to pass laws that allows the state to sanction those that get too ugly according to socially agreed upon systems. But it all could go away at any moment. I mean, this is the problem with the idea of natural rights. There are no natural rights. There are created rights. And one of Oakeshott's big points is democracy is an unbelievable historical achievement in human cooperation. Right? And still, 21st century, we're arguing about natural rights. People don't know what rights mean, is that if someone tries to do something to me that breaks the law, and I pull the state in to try to help me, if that person gets too belligerent and tries to harm me, the state sanctioned a system to stop them or take them and put them out of the system. That's what democracy ends up meaning. And we've romanticized it and spiritualized it and Christianized it, and till it's become ridiculously binary.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are now.
I have another question for you, but would you rather have like one more big question or jump into some funsy questions that might be a little more simple to answer?
Look, you were very kind to invite me onto your program. I'll do whatever you want.
Okay. All right, Dom.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
No, you're
that's
more than
pretty
welcome.
sweet. All right,
cool.
we got one more kind, potentially big question, depending on
Yeah.
how you want to answer it. And some of it you've kind of already hinted to. But what insight does cognitive science as a field provide to one's understanding of popular culture?
Okay, so one thing that pop culture does well, the kind of stuff I watch, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, The Expanse. I just finished watching Bridgerton. But the common themes that tend to come out of art and pop culture is a commitment to the narrative of inherent connectedness among humans. Not only just inherent connectedness and inherent belongingness, but inherent connectedness of everything, right? Art seems to be one of the central defenders of that idea in our cultural conversation. So I'm trying to think. Just silly stuff, but Monty Python's The Life of Brian.
Sure, yeah.
Don't know if you ever saw it, but everybody thinks Brian is the Messiah, right? So Brian meets this girl, they go to his place, they have an evening together, and he wakes up in the morning and opens the windows, and there's a throng of people. And they start, the Messiah, and he goes, I'm not the Messiah. And he goes, you must all think for yourselves. And they all say in unison, we must all think for ourselves.
Yeah.
And then he says, you're all individuals. And they all say, we're all individuals. And this one guy says, I'm not. That contradiction is something our culture is really fighting with right now. You got oligarchs, I'm just going to call them oligarchs,
Yeah.
who really think that they are independent individuals. And they think that they're self-made. And this hyper amplification of individualism has made our parts of our culture sociopathic. And as we try to, if we have a culture that conglomerates wealth, brings wealth together, and puts one person in as a CEO who can make a decision to close a factory in Michigan and put 1,000 people out of work with a phone call, that's called reckless disregard for the welfare of others, which is one of the major diagnostic criteria of antisocial personality disorder. So we have, because of the form of capitalism we have in the United States, that capitalism coupled with hyper-individualism has given rise to a culture that actually cultivates sociopathy in its business leadership. And to the point where universities rely on donors to teach. When I was at State University, when I was your age, I suspect 60% of my tuition was paid by the state, meaning taxes were harvested from some source, invested in what? Developing the frontal cortex of the culture, right? Now, State University funded at 14%. Now a kid got to take out the mortgage on a small house to get a 4-year degree. That is such ridiculously evil generational theft. And when you look at the market of how these young people try to restructure these loans, those middle tier loans that don't have interest rates that high, there are people investing in those monies to make money off of your interest. I mean, it's just eating the young. It's just, and while they're up there at the top saying, yeah, I did this all myself. Um, so pop culture is one of those places. It always brings us back to connectedness. It's the evil sociopath. The villains usually end up being sociopaths. Now, you know, you look at Killmonger from Black Panther, who expressed sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies in terms of killing the enemy, yet he was doing it for more of a sociological reason, right? He had an argument to make. That's not how most villains are written, and that's why he was such a great villain, right? Most villains are written, and they might as well just be billionaires, right? And
Magneto's like that.
yeah, now that Magneto's a little bit
That's a
like
little-
Killmonger.
Yeah.
Magneto was
Right.
like that in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, when Magneto says never again, that shit's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're, I think all humans beings live in what I call a gradient of violence. In other words, you ask them, would you ever shoot someone or kill someone? And they might say no, but then they say, well, I have someone came in my house and they were attacking my family. And then you keep, well, what about your neighbor? What about your mom? What about your grandparents? What about your cousins? And you find that as the gradient gets further and further from their immediate life, their propensity to say, I wouldn't be violent increases. But so when Magneto says never again, he knows he's willing to use violence to protect a group. And Killmonger's willing to use violence to protect a group. And what I appreciate about Magneto and Killmonger is that they're honest about the violence. There are plenty of countries that will use violence to protect their group, but won't be honest that what they're doing is protecting their group.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
we get a bunch of bullshit, trumped up
Yeah.
cognitive explanations of what's going on. But so I appreciate that, and that's why those are good villains, because the argument makes sense. But most villains are sociopaths, and it's the heroes, like even in Endgame, right? How did Endgame end? The village came in and saved the universe. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody came
Yeah.
in, saved the universe. And the fact, I'm sorry, but I'll argue this point till I die. There's a scene where 3 or 4 female superheroes are wrestling with,
Thanos.
what's his name? Thanos
Yeah.
to get the gauntlet, right?
Yeah.
And they can't. These 4 strong women can't. But Tony Stark, man, he's able to slide in there and just grab it off his hand and get that white billionaire, get that white billionaire moment of
Yeah.
forgiveness. It's like piss
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
I was very
Yeah.
disappointed.
That's pretty
It's
bad.
redemption for you. Piss off, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah.
And piss off on that mythology,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you go somewhere else to get your redemption, right? but not here. So yeah, pop culture is where we look for redemption, where we look for what tells us that we are connected.
And it's such a
And
facilitator of togetherness, or like senses of, like with cons even, like just think about how much we were able to talk about the ways that regular people can have a piece of being part of the bigger picture, or see each other as like even if it's in these moments of constraint that are outside of everyday life, or take place in different contexts or whatever, or expressed in different ways. There's still a piece that people feel like they can be part of in pop culture.
One of the reasons I love going to cons now is because I can cosplay older men very well, and I love young kids saying Logan.
Yeah.
I love young kids saying Garp.
Yeah.
They lose their mind, right?
Yeah.
And I said, let's get a picture together, man. It's like going to the carnival. It's like, going to a circus. And no, and for me, creativity is the key to successful culture.
Yeah.
Right now, I've been posting on Facebook, we're continuing to give ourselves a cultural lobotomy right now. We're just tearing away at our frontal cortex. And 5 years from now, when our flu vaccines don't work because we gave up on research and we don't know what flus are coming next. Because you do research and they mix a bunch of things together, and that's what it's going to be this year. When the science is gone, it's not funded. It's just dumb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's just really, really dumb.
Yeah.
It's someone I was hearing. I listened to a lot of Ezra Klein, and they were talking about it being we're having our Mao Chinese Revolution moment, where anti-intellectualism is
Interesting.
really, and a lot of racism too. Uh, it's just really running at the heart of a lot of things that are going on. But I digress there. But yes, pop culture telling all the stories.
Yeah.
You know, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I watched it every Saturday morning with my kids when it was on
Oh.
TV for real. And that was our church,
Yeah.
right? That's how I taught. We always used pop culture as a medium for initiating difficult conversations.
Yeah. Story
Because
time.
I try to talk about, adolescent sex with my kids, then I go, yeah, Dad.
Yeah.
But if we watch Straight A, if we watch, Mean Girls or something like that, those are people out there, and then we can just talk about the people out there, and we can do that with our kids, because I think the problem a lot of kids face is that they get raised by kids, not by their parents aren't engaging the content that the kids are consuming.
Yeah.
So they're embodying dynamics that parents aren't aware of at all. So pop culture, if I were to say pop culture is a cultural savior right now, I'd get a lot of shit. But Avatar: The Last Airbender, Korra, One Piece, Full Metal Alchemist, all these stories, they're also terribly important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're in good company in the world of folklore, but also on this stream for that in particular.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
All right, I got a couple funsies for you that are kind of related to pop culture, but they might be a little bit, easier for you to answer, a little faster to answer if you want.
This has all
Or
been an
not.
absolute blast. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
awesome.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks. What's your favorite TV series you've covered on your YouTube channel, Dark Loops Productions, which I've plugged in the chat a couple times for people. Favorite, TV series.
No, The Expanse is okay. The Expanse is my favorite sci-fi series ever.
Hey.
Deadwood is my favorite TV show ever. I've never covered Deadwood on Dark Loops. It aired for 3 seasons in the early 2000s. 20th anniversary came around, and so I was getting a crew together to podcast it, but it just didn't come to be. But The Expanse is just the best.
So 2 of our friends, one of them being my girlfriend, and then another friend of ours, they do one of them runs, but they do the Expanse meetup at DragonCon, the photo shoot at DragonCon every year.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've never seen The Expanse, but like just seeing the costumes, I feel like I have to. This might be a sign that I also have to. I've seen the costumes, and they've played me Deep Purple Highway Star and Belter Patois, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life.
The 2 major things about The Expanse: the female characters are the best, because in that time frame, women having powerful roles has been normalized. So what we don't get is an over the top anti-male feminism. We just get women in power who drop F-bombs just like anyone else in power when they're frustrated. Telling people to shut up and get out of my way when they're frustrated. Arguing with anybody, be it a man or a woman. Every once in a while the gender stuff does come up. But I've never seen women in power written that well. Because often when women are written in power, it's kind of an anti-male. How much can I act like
or
that
like
guy?
What's my proximity to maleness in this role?
Yes.
It's like,
Sorry, Kara Thrace, but that's what I'm picturing.
So that treatment of feminism was refreshing to me, because it shows anybody in power is just, unless it's a hard job if you're going to try to do it well at all. It's frustrating. It's every moment of your day, and it's hard. So I appreciated that. But the best character in The Expanse is a thing called the proto-molecule. And it's an energy transformation system that brings in organisms, machines, reorganizes them into its own system, and then it does something to the solar system that I won't spoil, but it's freaking amazing. And whenever I've been on a lot of Expanse panels at Comic Cons,
Mm-hmm.
and I always cosplay one of the characters, Joel Miller, um,
Mm.
and I just have so much fun with it. I was on an Expanse panel at San Diego last year with a woman, Blackwood, who's a NASA designer. And she invited a bunch of us from that panel up to the Jet Propulsion Labs in Pasadena to
Oh my
actually
gosh.
do an Expanse panel for the employees.
Whoa, that's kind of awesome.
Amazing.
Wow.
It was one of the coolest days of my life.
That's
Yeah, and
pretty
that
awesome.
interview is actually available on Dark Loops Productions.
Nice.
Sound quality isn't the best, but it's still fun.
We
Yeah.
take
Um,
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Expanse and Deadwood.
That one. Do you have a favorite Magneto moment?
So I do. Anything my favorite X-Men is going to be from X-Men 97.
Which we
Except
love.
for-
Dom made me watch. Yeah, very happy for that.
except for Logan.
Yeah.
Logan is by far, I think, the best X-Men movie. But I could. There are lines that Magneto has. There's a speech he gives in episode something. I don't remember. But simply never again.
Never again. Yeah.
Because what it is, it's an honest admission that I'm going to use violence to stop you. And whenever I say those things, people are like, "You're pro-violence?" No, man, I'm pro being alive.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
pro other people being alive that you're trying to hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop you from hurting them. Those aren't, of course, death, fighting, killing bothers me, but some shit needs to end, and I'll take responsibility for the unintended effects of what I try to end, because war never. I mean, there's all kinds of unintended consequences that happen, and at the same time, something's got to end, and it's never clear, and it's never good or evil. Or I'll shut up.
No, that's great. I
You're
think
getting
Dom.
interviewed. Don't shut up.
Yeah.
Alright.
Please, no, we love it.
You're very kind.
Dom's got this one, and I think, I don't know, I think you're gonna like this question.
This
I'll go ahead
leads
and
in,
ask
this,
you whatever you want, man. I mean,
this leads in nicely. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's the backstory. So when Daisy first was getting into your work, X-Men 97 had just come on.
Yeah, so we're watching.
I was trying to
yeah.
get Daisy to watch X-Men 97 for the how much they talk about extinction, because I know that's like a
Big theme.
paradigm that they use a lot in their writing. Okay,
right.
and so I kept trying to be like X-Men 97, and they were like J. Scott Jordan, and we were like talking past each other. And I remember this conversation because they kept saying wild systems theory, and I was so X-Men 97 pilled. I was thinking of the Wild Sentinel attack on Genosha, and I kept calling it Wild Sentinels theory for Daisy.
That's
But-
hilarious.
Yeah.
But however, I think after sitting through this interview, I don't think that would be a problem.
No,
So here's my question:
Wild Sentinel.
What would Wild Sentinels theory be?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, were there parts of Wild Sentinel that were biological?
Yes,
Yes.
there were.
Yeah.
So that's where we are now, because one of the more difficult things to explain and to understand about wild systems theory is what meaning is, because and why I have a certain kind of aboutness as a multi-scale self-sustaining energy transformer. What that means is my cells give rise to organs, which give rise to the body as a whole. And every level of this self-sustaining energy transformation system is porously open to the rest. So that means all of this is organically, contextually emergent from this. Therefore, it all has to be about each other. It all has to be about everything in the body.
Yeah.
When you build something out of metal, when you build a computer, you've got magnetic bits that are flipping their charge. But that, and then you've got electricity running through things to manage that. But that energy transformation is in no way related to the integrity of the computer. The energy transformation isn't about sustainment, isn't about an integrated being. That's why you can have aboutness in a computer, but it's not our nested aboutness as a self-sustaining system. So once, and it's already happened, by the way, people are putting neural blobs on computer circuits now because neural tissue doesn't care how it's fed. All it does is organize itself around pulses coming into it, and neurons that fire together wire together. So what's going on is the computer world is tapping into the self-sustaining nature of biological work by integrating it with chip work, and that's what the wild sentinel was, right?
Yeah.
And the wild sentinel was obviously much more complex than the other sentinels, much more dynamic. If I remember it, colors, things about it could change. I just don't remember a whole lot. But I said, yeah, that's because they took the most plastic substance we know of on the planet, which is neural tissue, and neurons will embody any contextual constraint as long as they're fed. And as long as the context is kept alive. So, for example, the reason our brain looks like it does is simply an artifact of the fact that it blossoms within a skull.
Right.
So that ends up folding up as it grows. There's no brain, there's no gene plan for what a brain looks like. There isn't even a gene plan for the brain per se. Neurons that fire together, wire together, those that don't die. And we just keep producing more and more neurons until we're 5. And those of the neural networks that get laid down are embodiments of the world the kid lives in. If it's a violent world, it's a violent system. If it's a calm world, it's a calm. I'm generalizing, but that's the idea. There's no genetic plan for what you're going to become. So, yeah, the Wild Sentinel, I thought that was a good character. If anybody ever does a book on X-Men 97, I'll definitely write a chapter on the Wild
Sentinel theory.
All right.
Take it.
Challenge.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, that was. I remember that. That was very, very cool. Yeah.
I was gonna say this is why we like Neon Genesis Evangelion, but
Yeah.
that's my side. That's my side
Another
quest.
neural glob on a computer system or whatever you said. Yeah.
No, man, that's why anime is so far ahead.
Yeah. So that was so beyond. That was in the 90s. It's like so beyond. Like,
Unbelievable. Ghost in the Shell was 85, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe 95.
Yeah.
85. Everything in Akira is a frame, hand drawn, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way they drew light in Akira, no one has surpassed that yet.
No, and I'm not. I'll just say if I don't like CGI, I'm old. There's some CGI that's amazing.
Yeah.
But, but some of that older stuff, man, is amazing.
One thing that I find very compelling about anime is the way that blood is animated.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know why. I feel like it's different than anything else. Like, I've watched plenty of horror movie. I've watched, maybe just because I like particularly, like, I don't know, dark or, I don't know, broody anime or whatever. But whenever I feel like blood is different. Like, it just, like, I don't know, it's just different.
The thing is, the blood splatters in anime are always pretty authentic.
Yeah, or they're like, they have, like, the affect of what a shower of blood would look like or something. Like, yes, it's a wall of red rushing, and yes, there's that amount of blood does not exist in a human body, but like anyway.
Well, I'll be giving a talk at a con I can't mention yet because it can't be announced, but we're doing a panel on, oh my god, what is that and what are they eating?
That's awesome.
Consumption morality in manga.
Yeah,
right? Because you watch Attack on Titan. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Season 3, you recognize who was eating who at the first episode. It's just
you're like,
foul.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the more brutal metaphors for connectedness.
Yeah.
Right. And then it just lets them plug humans into the world in a way that machines don't. So no, and the storytelling, it's just a whole different worldview. But Shintoism, Buddhism are all very consistent with wild systems theory, right? So it doesn't surprise me.
Well, that I'll say
I was
two
gonna
things
say
really
we have
quick.
a chat. There's
We-
a chat question for it. Yeah.
We have a chat question, but before we get to that, I want to say that's the end of our formal questions. But we still have a really quick, like, kind of little parlor game to play.
Yes, I'm fine.
And
I'm perfectly fine.
okay,
You're
and
wonderful to invite me in.
well, Dom,
You can
ask
get that set up, Daisy, and
Yeah.
I'll ask this question from chat.
I was gonna say, ask the question from chat while I do some computer stuff for a second.
Okay, while Daisy gets that set up, I can't see in the chat says loved X-Men 97, recently watched it, followed by the OG series. Hell yeah. P.S. Have you seen the She-Hulk series? And if so, what are your thoughts? Have you seen the She-Hulk series?
Yeah, I
Dr. Jordan.
podcasted the She-Hulk series.
Yeah, so what do you have to, what do you think about the She-Hulk series?
Well, I actually liked it.
I liked it too.
I think the challenge for any show is the writing capable of setting a tone that persists throughout the show.
Mhm.
And there was a sort of comedic, snarky feminist tone to the whole show that was amazing. When she shows up at that camp for men helping each other through their struggles, it was fantastic. I think Disney, because they own Marvel now, I think they have an important choice to make, because my favorite female character in the Marvel Universe is Scarlet Witch.
Ooh.
And I thought WandaVision was the best series that Marvel has done. Oh, except for Daredevil. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, except for 97.
You cannot touch the fight scenes in Daredevil. The fight scenes in Daredevil are close to the best ever put on film. But WandaVision and the idea that this traumatized woman, traumatized from her parents dying the way they died, the way her brother died, and now her lover, Vision, dies. What does she do? She takes her trauma and she creates a bubble. Well, because she's a superpower witch, that bubble manifests itself in the world around her. But traumatized people make bubbles, right? And so I thought that was one of the best explorations of self-gaslighting that I've ever seen on film. So that one was good. She-Hulk was a bit more on the comedy side, and I would watch season 2. I heard, my understanding is that season 2 was canceled, but I thought the comedy was really, really good, and it took your traditional chauvinistic crap, and Disney's got a choice to make, and I think they're making it, and that is, all that crap just makes them more popular. And that crap, what's going to be around 20 years? The women in power being professed to by She-Hulk, or the guy haters? And it's going to be the women in power. So I think we're kind of in a last gasp culturally of certain forms of toxic masculinity. And Disney has the opportunity to be the sort of control parameter that just keeps putting pressure on that with media. And I mean, if you don't like it, don't watch it. But they watch it and they don't like it and they complain about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Why are you
Can't let
doing
it
this to
go.
yourself? Why are you you're ruining my characters? What on God's earth can that ever mean?
Yeah.
Your characters? It's like people who get mad that Lucas won't reveal the original Star Wars. It's sorry, guys. It's a private property. It's a private product. It's private industry. And so anyway, I think Disney's got enough money. They can keep putting these things out and pushing these envelopes. Yeah. So I liked it. I think the actress was in a much better situation when she was in
Orphan Black?
Yes. I think that was a better story for her skills. Yet I thoroughly enjoyed She-Hulk. And friend that I watched it with, she enjoyed it, and then we'd have a guest on every week, and we all laughed and enjoyed it. It was great. Very smart. Very smart.
I can't
Was
see.
that
if it
Did you
says-
hear that?
yeah.
That as of like this week, I think Roku accidentally uploaded the original non-special edition Star Wars.
Oh my god.
Didn't mind
Yeah,
it.
so it does exist one place. It probably won't be up for long.
Yeah.
Well, they got to watch it because Han did shoot first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And what's wrong with Han shooting first? What, for Christ's sake? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, what was I going to say? Oh, the first 3 Star Wars were any good. And I mean 4, 5, and 6 weren't any good because they had a space pirate in it, a space cowboy, and that was Han Solo. You've got to have people fighting within this silly binary fight. The problem with episodes 1, 2, and 3 is just all political boredom. I'm sorry, I want to be the pirate. And if you ever watch Firefly,
I was gonna say, are you a big Firefly fan or what?
well, it wasn't until my girlfriend watched it and didn't like it. No, I'm just
No.
teasing. But the question and answer asked by
Glad it
Firefly is
ended.
what happened. The question that Firefly answers is what happened to Han Solo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Only went off and got a ship and got out of
Yeah.
that mess. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. I love She-Hulk though. It was a lot of fun. I wish they'd have done season 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't clicked watch stream on Discord, now would be the time to do that because I've shared screen to you for a little
talking
parlor
to me?
game. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
So we have it's something we do with a lot of our guests. We have a kind of parlor game at the end of the interview of just we're reading a lot about you and we find fun stuff that you do. We've teased a little
you're
bit
sharing
of this.
you're sharing your screen, or I need to share mine?
I'm sharing
Yeah.
my screen to you.
You gotta click the one that Daisy is sharing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do I see it?
It's
Are we full
possible-
screened again? Are we full screened? Our faces?
Yes.
I see Echo Chest, Blazing Eights, and Lo-Fi. Let me turn that.
Dom, can you see it?
Oh, now I see it. No,
Oh, there
no,
you
no.
go.
I had to click- that was
I was
an
like-
ad. I had to get rid of that.
Ah,
Okay. Well, have
I'm
you
looking.
ever made a tier list before?
I have not.
Wonderful. Well, a tier
This
list.
would be good because those are some amazing shows you have on the left there. I don't know if that's an
The
ad.
ads,
That's
yeah.
also an
Those
ad.
are also ads.
Yeah.
I know they are so amazing.
That's
shows.
actually the Twitch isn't seeing that. That's
Yeah.
cropped out for Twitch.
It's cropped out for
Alright.
it's cropped out for our audience. But that being said, tier list is something that comes from fighting games, but online and in the Twitch live stream universe, it's kind of become a way
Okay.
for people to rank things in everyday life. And we're folklorists, so we love when people love things that are part of everyday life. So what we've done
Right.
here is curated a tier list. So it's a ranking system from S to D. S is like superior, like above A triple plus, that kind of thing, and then D is like dumpster, like the worst, like
Right.
last it's your F. We have
Right.
curated a list of your own cosplays. And
All
we would
right,
love
then.
for you to rank them on a scale of S to D. We don't have all of them, but we gathered some of them, and we just thought it would be fun to have you rank which ones you, on any scale. Really, you get to determine the criteria for evaluation here.
And you can
you
zoom
can-
in, right, Daisy?
Do you want me to zoom in more?
But you don't want them to all be S, right? You want me to make some differentiations? Do you want?
You could.
One-
Nobody has ever done an all S tier list.
No, okay.
But people
All right,
do
well,
love
there-
people do love a strong opinion. You don't need to fill them in every category, and
right.
you can rank them based on like the fun you had with them or
Yes.
whatever,
Okay.
the ease of wearing them, whether you made it yourself, whatever it is, you get to decide. It's
All right.
totally your
Okay.
opinion.
Love to be unencumbered.
Yeah. The first one we have here is your Negan from Walking Dead.
Oh.
We think it's
Okay,
Negan.
I can't
Negan.
see that well.
It's a little
Yeah,
hard
I
to
was gonna say,
see.
can you zoom? Can you like control plus
Can
or
I?
control scroll forward? No, Daisy.
I can do that. Let me just adjust it on so what Twitch sees is a little different.
Yep.
But yes, I put him there, but that's arbitrary. Don't pay attention to that part. You can put him wherever you
So
want.
if I'm going to give any of those a D, it's gonna be that one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Any reason in particular?
Yeah, that I didn't make that cosplay.
Oh.
We were
Oh,
at a,
well, that's fair.
we were at a con, and I was with a bunch of friends, and they had Baby the car, and then they had a bunch of costumes that were trivially like various characters, and you could put them on and take pictures, and pay to have the picture taken. So I threw the Negan on a supernatural set. I don't know, but yeah, that one was minimal effort on my. We had a ton of fun, but yeah.
Sure.
Up next, we have your monkey, D. Garp, which we have talked about briefly.
That picture is, I believe that's the picture I'm thinking of.
You're standing with someone.
That's an S.
That's an
Yes.
S. Oh,
I love it.
You did
That
say Garp
was-
earlier, and Zach immediately
Zach was like-
shuddered because he instantly saw it.
Yeah, he was like,
No,
"Oh my god, I see."
I had such a good time that day. I've been doing well. I'm full on Garp. I mean, buying real suits, because I wanted to make it authentic as I could. And the day that I wore it at San Diego last year, they were doing a One Piece 20th anniversary concert at the band shell out behind the convention center. But in order to get a ticket or to get in line, I had to go all the way around the band shell, and everybody in line was around the band shell. So I had to walk around by everybody who was in line. And there was just so much love.
Aw.
People wanted to take pictures with Garp. And guys, there's another reason why this is an S+. When I cosplay Garp, if I have time, what I do is I go online and I buy a bunch of black plastic balls like the balls you would find in a ball pit.
Okay.
And I have them in a bag. And then I have Dark Loops Productions buttons made. And I stick a button to each ball. And I go around giving out Garp cannonballs.
That's awesome.
It is so cool. There's so much joy on people's face. Hey, have a Garp cannonball. They just get so happy. I don't know if it's that. It's just it's the
Very
best.
good.
That is probably close to my best.
I love when cosplays involve a thing that's interactive with other people. Like,
Yes,
it
you
can
gotta have
always
prop.
be, but yeah, like bringing a prop. I love a prop, except for holding some
Love a prop.
props. I love a prop my body can hold, but not necessarily my hands. But yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I love giving people stuff.
But don't get mad if a lot of these end up being S's. 'cause
No
we-
way. No, this
we
is
won't.
like, we will not at all.
All
Some
right.
of these are really very excellent
Oh, you're
cosplays.
very kind.
No, for real. And up next we have the one, the only Jaime Lannister post hand.
That was my first cosplay ever.
Really? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And that's my sister next to me in the
Yeah.
Brianna of Tarth outfit. That has to be an S. It's just it got me started on cosplay, and the
Oh, yeah.
story there is that my sister made the burlap. We bought burlap and made me a rag robe
That's
but
so
it was
awesome.
too clean. It was too clean, so we were
Exactly.
staying
Exactly.
in Airbnb. So we went out and bought a 5-pound bag of dirt and tried to get it dirty, and it didn't work. So when we got to the hotel room, I threw the dirt in the tub and mixed it in with. We were horrible people that day, but it came up looking pretty grungy. And again, a lot of really fun memories. There's a podcast I listen to, Sister Speak Productions. I've been listening to them for at least 10, 15 years. And they do things called family reunions. And they did their family reunion that year in Nashville. A bunch of us went to the Con of Thrones. When we were up on stage in the cosplay competition, they were cheering us from the audience. It was just a perfect experience. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So speaking of family reunion, I don't know if you know.
Oh, yeah, this is
but do
wild.
Do you know that Daisy cosplays Joffrey?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
I was Joffrey in the musical Dom wrote, and then also just in
Yeah.
general.
And then I've got to let my hair down for.
Oh yeah, you gotta let your hair down. But
And when Daisy met me, I was cosplaying Robert Baratheon when my beard
Yeah.
was longer. So
Oh,
we're all
very
an
cool.
extended family on this call right now.
it really,
There you go.
truly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
So
pretty
funny.
awesome, guys.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
things are so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Up next we got Old Man Logan. We love
Classic.
classic.
So it is classic. I'm going to give it an S for different reasons.
Okay.
It's an S. It's S because it's easy.
Yes.
Yes,
You
that's
already own a suit.
valid.
You already have a gray beard.
Valid.
I have, yeah. But it gets more it has more impact, emotional impact on the audience per unit work on my part.
Yeah.
Every day I wear Logan at a con, everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
And I can get a picture with anybody when
Yeah.
I'm dressed up. I want to write a book called Logan Gets All the Love because no, I have a bunch of great pictures with people acting out Logan scenes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Love it.
Do you have is it the top of S? Sometimes we do vertical and
Yeah, because they're horizontal and vertical.
So
yeah.
like right now,
that
Garb
o-
is like number 1 ultimate. Jamie's like in number 2. Logan's in number
Yeah.
3. If you had to.
Yeah,
Is that
Right.
is that
Yeah.
good?
that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Up next we have the Purple Man,
Which you mentioned.
which you
A.
mentioned.
That's an A.
An A,
It's
okay.
Got it.
Now the reason that that's an A is because I don't know if you can tell in that picture, but I did color my hair purple
Yes.
Yes.
that day. But I've done better. There was another WonderCon I went to where I put on purple face makeup because I really wanted to do a good grave.
Yeah.
I've got some pictures, and the pictures I took at home worked better than the pictures at the
Sure.
con. But another thing about that picture, when I was wearing that outfit, I wore that same outfit to Fan Expo Boston, and Dave Tennant came in, so
Ooh.
I got a photo op with Dave Tennant. Hold on just a second, I'll show it to you.
Boy, we love show and tell. This is awesome.
So this is my
Whoa!
that's
Oh,
me
yeah.
as the Purple Man with David Tennant.
That's so cool.
That's
And
really
he looks
cool.
at me. I mean, I know what I'm paying. I know I'm paying for it. You know, I'm not going to pretend he's my friend. But he just looks at me and he says, "Marvelous."
That's awesome.
It was very sweet. Yeah. Very, very cool.
That is really cool. Up next we have Dr. Brenner.
All right, that one's an A. You
Above
can
or
put that
below?
one. No, you put it right at the end. No, I'm sorry. Put it at the end of the S's, and that order still works.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So, Dr. Brenner was, I thought, one of my cooler ideas.
That's a good one.
and
Nobody
then
does.
when I-
A lot of people do L. A lot of people do Steve.
Yeah.
But not
no.
but not anybody. I've never seen a Dr. Brenner in the wild.
A lot of people do Eddie. I've seen so many
Eddie.
Eddies.
A lot of people do
So many
Eddie.
Eddies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing about doing Brenner the way I did him is that I get away with the white beard because he's
Right.
been on the run, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But in Fan Expo Boston, Fan Expo does these things called like Harry Potter photo meetup, and so you have this hall that has like 6 to 7 12-foot by 8-foot backdrops.
Oh,
And that's all it
pretty
is.
Cool.
So you all show up, but there's no anybody there to take your picture. So there was no way that I was gonna sit there and let things be hodgepodge.
Yeah.
So I was with a colleague. I was with a colleague my age. No, she was not my age. She's 10, 20 years younger than I am. But I said to her and another young lady next to us, look, if you guys stay here and tell everybody that we're going to organize some cosplay group photos, I'll go down and I'll get people to come down here. So I went down and I would just approach. Now look I look like I look now, right? And I'm approaching these younger people and I'm saying, hey, we're going to take group photos if you want to come down. Nobody gave me shade. Nobody gave me side eye. Nobody thought like, who is this guy trying to tell us what to do? No, they all wanted to party and no one
Yeah.
was leading, right? So
Yeah.
we get everybody back. Oh my God, we've got pictures, 30, 40 people all doing Stranger Things characters.
That's cool.
So it was a really cool moment for an older white guy
Yeah.
to actually try to take on some leadership and not be dissed for it.
Yeah.
You know, and showing some kids out there that there are actually older white guys that are decent people. And that's another one of the reasons I cosplay, because we've got a really bad reputation.
Yeah, and I love this L too. This
Rock.
particular
That kid's-
11 is really good. Yeah.
It's so funny because I said, I remember what the kid's name was. And I said, let's get a picture. He said, okay. I said, "Here, I want you to flay my brain. Okay, just flay
Yes,
my
flay
brain."
my brain.
And he did. And the lighting and the picture by
Yeah.
the backdrop behind him, man, that's a good picture.
It's really
Yeah,
good.
that's precious.
Let's see. Up next we got Steed Bonnet.
Yeah, you just put that up in S and keep it in the order.
Okay.
That's fine.
I love it. That's
So-
that's a fun one.
Oh, that is so fun.
It looks like a good comfortable cosplay also.
It's
Yeah.
terribly comfortable and, dare I say, somewhat sexy, right? And then
Yeah, you have a robe. Yeah.
New makeup.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see in that picture, but I got online to a fake food store and ordered a teacup. And so I walk around the con with
Yeah.
a teacup, but I tie a rope to the bottom of the teacup and I run it under my arm and under my thing so that I can't drop the teacup because it's not cheap.
That's nice.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
That's really smart. Yeah.
That's the fun thing about cosplaying, coming up with the things underneath that keep it going, right?
Yeah, right.
So, cosplaying a gay pirate, I could have been called, an appropriator because I'm not gay, but
But you are a pirate?
But
I am a pirate.
exactly.
And this was I was on a panel. I was San Diego. I think I was on a panel about Our Flag Means Death, and I always want to try to cosplay. And I thought Steed's the one I should obviously cosplay.
Yeah.
So I did, and I did that at WonderCon too, and just got a ton of love.
That's awesome.
Just everybody wanted to take a picture with Steed.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Oh yeah.
That's great. We have Ted Lasso.
Yeah, that's kind of that's an S. Put it the other. None of these are bad. These are all
Yeah, these are fun.
primos.
Yeah.
So the cosplay isn't hard because I just ordered the stuff, to be honest.
Sure.
But what's cool about that picture is me with someone else, which was my daughter.
Aww.
And we did a panel by ourselves. Fan Expo New Orleans, I think. Just the two of us on stage. And of course, we play soccer games. We play card soccer games with the audience, like a trivia thing. But I wanted this audience to have the experience of watching the dart scene together. I don't know if you guys
cool.
have seen Ted Lasso, but there's a moment where he plays darts, and there's a 3 or 4 minute unfolding of the story he's telling, and it's tear-jerking, and it's something that is just brilliant. Begging people to be curious, not judgmental, right? And I had downloaded it. I had ready to show on my Mac to put it on the screen, and the sound didn't work.
No.
So I went on YouTube. I had a little hotspot on my phone, I'll admit. So I said, "You guys want to Rocky Horror Picture Show this thing together?" And they said, "Yes."
Oh my god, that's awesome.
So we showed the scene, and I said, "Now wait a minute. There are kids out there. This is R-rated language.
Yeah.
Your parents okay?" And the parents said, "Yes." So we all watched that scene together, and that's one of the beauties of contemporary media. The first time I watched something like that as a fan with fans was some buddies. We got together to play Dungeons and Dragons, and this is like late 70s, early 80s. And my buddy had a VHS machine, and we watched Christopher Reeve's Superman on VHS. And then all we started doing was making fun of it in real time where we were watching it. Well, now there's a TV show called Mystery Science Theater that does exactly the same thing, right? And it's become this culture of consuming media collectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I think we should do folklore movie Mystery Science Theater.
You should.
I mean, we do commentary, but
at an AFS or something.
Like at an AFS, yeah.
Like with our shadows cast on the screen.
Yeah, or like the three, like you, me, and Caitlin in the front row, like not facing the crowd but facing the screen with microphones or something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
I would do that for a complete unknown. I think that
Oh,
would be funny.
that would be funny. A complete unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would actually be funny. 'Cause
Oh,
that's
guys, I gotta go in about 5 minutes. Is
All right,
that
We got
okay?
one
Last
last one.
one.
We got one final cosplay.
All
last
right.
one. Edward Elric.
Okay, guys, this is hard because I absolutely love this cosplay.
It's very good.
You already mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually I'm gonna sneak that in right behind Garp.
Okay.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, it's
Because-
very good.
I've had opportunities to talk to kids who are cosplaying. Shito Todoroki, I think is his name, from My Hero Academia. He's the kid that's ice and fire.
Yeah.
He has daddy problems. And we're talking, and then when I posted it on Facebook, I put a caption. Shito Todoroki says, Professor Elric has a conversation with Shito Todoroki about having a difficult father. I love that kind of stuff,
It's so
right?
good. Yeah.
Oh, so that would be, that would be my tier list.
We love this. I guess on a scale from Garp to Negan, what's our scale? Dom, do you have an idea? How invested?
How much time did you spend? How much time did you spend on your props?
Yeah, how much time do you spend on your props? That's very good.
Yeah. Oh, then you're figuring out what the dimension is. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Scott, thank you so much for being on the show with us. That was incredible. I'm gonna clip this, and the interview portion will go on YouTube. And I just can't thank you enough for being here and talking to us about Wild Sentinels theory.
Well, I can thank you guys enough for having me on.
Truly,
Part
yeah.
of the point
truly,
of
this is so
Dark Woods
special.
Productions is to keep these long-winded, nuanced, never-ending
Yes.
conversations alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what culture needs.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Yes, have a great night.
Ladders in the chat for Scott, everyone.
Yeah.
Ladders in the chat.
Bye. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Quilts have had meaning on many levels. Making quilts helped me to get a sense of my own space, sense of finding my way, sense of really working my way out of the labyrinth.